Thank you, Presiding Officer. The Scottish Conservatives will always stand up for motorists, unlike the left-wing parties in this chamber who continue to treat them with disdain. For too long, road users in this country have faced punitive and ill-considered measures that do little to support our economy, communities or environment in a fair and effective way. Motorists are not the enemy. They are parents doing school runs, workers getting to jobs, tradespeople running businesses and carers reaching the most vulnerable. Ordinary people going about their everyday lives. Motorists are essential to Scotland's economy and crucial for our connectivity, but they are being punished by this SNP government through punitive low-emission zones, controlled parking zones, botched disincentives to use car use, endless roadworks, a constant battle against pothole-ridden roads. And then there's the SNP's ludicrous plans for a 50-mile-an-hour national speed limit.
Nonsense.
If you don't mind, Mr Cole-Hamilton, I'll come to you in a second when I've got a bit more traction, shall we say. Despite what the SNP say in their amendment, it is not an exaggeration to describe this as a war against motorists. Cars remain the most popular form of transport in Scotland, and hard-working Scots feel they are increasingly treated as an afterthought. This is what people tell me, this is how they feel, about relentless policies that make their lives harder and more expensive without a feasible alternative being available. Mr Cole-Hamilton.
Alex Cole-Hamilton.
I'm very grateful to Sue Webber for giving way. Liberal Democrats believe we should incentivise getting out of cars and into public transport, but we do agree that we need to improve Scotland's road networks, not least to Inverness in the far north, the A9, the A96, the A82. I was surprised to see no mention of those main infrastructure projects in the Conservative motion. Is that an ambition?
Sue Webber.
An omission, Mr Cole-Hamilton. I think the general point is that it's roads across the country, and we didn't want to specify and single out single roads in this to make it more of a... we wanted to make it relevant for all of Scotland and not just those that rely on some of our rural connectivity. But going back to the points, this insidious drip-drip effect of anti-car policies is hampering our economy and connectivity and punishing already hard-pressed Scots. The SNP must stop viewing car drivers as bogeymen and end their war on Scotland's motorists, moving away from these damaging policies. The SNP, after all, have scrapped their target to reduce car use by 20% by 2030 after Audit Scotland said there was no costed delivery plan or clear milestones. And this is a stark admission of failure, but one that was entirely foreseeable. Audit Scotland report confirmed what many of us suspected. There was no costed delivery plan, no measurable milestones and no realistic understanding of how such a dramatic reduction could be achieved without crippling those who rely on cars daily. What we need is a pragmatic shift in approach. No more fines, zones or restrictions. We should be encouraging positive change through investment in EV infrastructure, incentives for greener choices, including public transport park and rides, and proper road maintenance that makes driving safer and more efficient.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. And I'd like to thank colleagues for the opportunity to set out to Parliament the importance and the impact of our policies and investments relating to road users, infrastructure and to the wider sustainable transport. Firstly, the war on motorists language used out of context to maximise that political traction, failing to consider the sensitivities of such language is frankly reckless, given the wider global considerations. And I would urge members, and I would genuinely urge members, to consider this during our deliberations today. Now, the First Minister has spoken about the dangers of the pushback against the climate crisis and the need for unity to make a renewed case for climate action. Talking about a war on motorists is unfortunately falling into that trap. I'll take you in a second. But hopefully we can reset the level of our discussion in order to find a solution that I think we can all agree to work on. I'll take the intervention.
I was wondering if I could refer to anything in my remarks today that I did not acknowledge that motorists want to be part of an affordable transition.
Minister.
I think what I'm talking about here is the language that's being used to bring this debate to the Chamber in the first place. Now, I recognise the fundamental importance of our roads and their users to the economic, social and environmental well-being of Scotland, and that includes drivers, hopefully of more EVs and public transport. The Conservatives' deregulation of bus services in the 1980s and the 1990s has resulted in decades of decline, meaning there isn't viable public transport provision in many communities, especially in rural areas. Now, there's poll after poll will demonstrate that people want access to high-quality, affordable transport. They want to reduce their travel costs, they want to take climate action and sustainable alternatives to car use, and I believe that that is probably the same right across this chamber, because I'll take your intervention.
Grateful to the Minister for taking intervention. At the Net Zero Committee this week, there was discussion of what more the Scottish Government could do to ensure we have reliable and affordable bus services. Will the Minister talk about what the Government will actually do?
Minister.
I will try to come on to that as I make my way through my contribution. Because going back to what I said, we all accept they want to get the alternative to car use, because I think that right across this chamber that's what we want to do. We need to reduce carbon emissions from transport, especially from car use, and the Scottish Government remains committed to reducing Scotland's reliance on cars and encouraging a shift towards public transport and active travel alongside a switch to electric vehicles. Let me make the point that I'm making. And I should like to point out that Scotland reached its target of 6,000 public EV charge points 2 years early through a combination of Scottish Government funding, delivery by local authority and private sector investment, and with approximately 24,000 additional public charge points to be delivered by 2030 through continued Scottish Government funding and increasing private sector investment now.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Well, I think it's clear that there is no war on the motorists. I think it's a bit silly to suggest that there is. But I absolutely think, though, that what we do see on our roads every single day is congestion misery. Motorists face congestion misery. So we should be tackling congestion. And we can only tackle congestion when the costs of public transport fall relative to the private car, and when better reliability, punctuality and frequency make bus and rail the natural choice for commuters where they have that choice available. I think facts are really important in this debate. And I ask members to reflect on the fact that since this Parliament was established, the number of cars on the roads have increased by 38%, mileage has gone up 16%. While at the same time, the cost of motoring has decreased by 19%, rail fares have increased by 31%, and bus and coach fares have raised by an eye-watering 102% in real terms. And it's quite clear that successive governments have prioritised car dependency, and those choosing or relying on public transport are continually being disadvantaged by government policy. Transport is the biggest climate polluter, and private cars pollute the most. Actions are needed to reduce private car usage and demand. Otherwise, other parts of our economy will have to pick up more of the burden in order to get to net zero. So a traffic reduction target backed by deliverable actions is needed now more than ever. And dropping the 20% target, Minister, was a real backward step, sending out the wrong message, removing the focus, undermining the partnership action needed on the ground to prioritise public transport and active travel. If there's time in hand, I'd welcome.
There's very limited time. Minister, briefly.
Would the member not accept that dropping the target that was set was because it was absolutely unachievable? However, the new guidance is clear.
Could the Minister please speak into his microphone? Thank you.
My apologies. That it's clear now that it's actually only a 7% reduction that is needed. And what we're doing today is working together to bring together the kinds of initiatives that will allow us to do what it is that we all want to achieve in this chamber.
Mark Ruskell.
I asked the Minister to reflect on what Duncan Cameron from First Group told Parliament just yesterday. He said that dropping the 20% target represents a huge missed opportunity. There was the opportunity there to actually bring this partnership action working together and to have a clear focus. You know, targets without measurable actions are doomed to fail. And despite publishing the draft route map to reduce that congestion with COSLA 3 years ago, the plan is yet to be agreed. I think when it comes back to COSLA at the end of this week, I think it will be gutted. I think all the meaningful action will be taken out of it. And all the actions that local authorities such as Edinburgh and Glasgow really want to put in place to start to tackle congestion, start to deliver investment, will be left wanting in that plan. And I think we need to reflect on the fact that progress, particularly on road charging, has been absolutely non-existent in Scotland. We're 22 years on now from the introduction of the congestion charge in London, which is now just accepted as a normal part of everyday life, and it raises significant revenue for public transport investment. It is time to support those local authorities who want to choose to introduce road user charging, such as Edinburgh and Glasgow. to deliver, no, I don't have any time, sorry, Mr Mountain, to deliver those right models for them to cut congestion and to raise money.
Earlier this year, the Scottish Government was forced to abandon its target for reducing car use by 20% by 2030. It was an ambitious goal, which unfortunately couldn't be met. The measures taken to attempt to reach this target do not equate to a war on motorists, as some would like to characterise it. We must reduce car emissions to tackle the climate crisis, through making public transport more affordable and accessible while maintaining the road infrastructure so many still rely on. More carrot and only as much stick as needed. Reducing our reliance on cars while ensuring our roads are safe is of the utmost importance. The Scottish Government's £36 million investment in road safety this year is a welcome step. It's vital that this funding supports behavioural change and helps local authorities improve their road infrastructure. The Conservative motion references the National Speed Management Review, and this is not a golden bullet, but simply a tool in ensuring that all speed limits are fit for their purpose. We know from international experience in France that a reduction in speed limits can reduce casualties, and I'm sure that members in this chamber take road safety seriously, and our policies must reflect that. Of course, cars will always have a place in our transport system, especially in rural areas of the country. But the environmental impact of widespread car use cannot be understated. Cars make up 39% of all transport emissions and 12.4% of Scotland's total emissions. That's a reality. We can't ignore it. We must move towards zero-emission vehicles and build a sustainable public transport network.
It's not a new debate. This is not a new debate. Back in 2006, the first ever climate inquiry in this Parliament recommended road user charging. It set the executive at the time a timescale of 10 years to get this right. They had till 2016 to bring in a fair system of road user charging. That date's gone, and we're now 10 years on from 2016, 2026, and we still have no more progress in Scotland on road user charging. So,
thank you very much, Presiding Officer. And I'd genuinely like to express my gratitude to members across the chamber for very valuable contributions and some of the consensus that we can work on going forward, which I and the Cabinet Secretary are very happy to do. Now, we have to accept we are predominantly a rural and sparsely populated country. And I recognise that opportunities to change the mode in remote rural communities are limited, and switching to electric vehicles will be of higher importance to those areas than it is in the cities. But it's clear by contributions from members that we agree on many things: the provision of high-quality, affordable transport options to reduce travel costs, to take climate action, and the need to offer sustainable and affordable alternative to private cars. And I'd encourage that continuous productive engagement across those in the chamber who are prepared to do so. It's widely accepted that LEZs are an effective and necessary tool to reduce pollution and therefore to protect public health. And their introduction is something the four cities in this government can be rightly proud of. I also recognise and I'm thankful for the investment that responsible businesses and vehicle owners have already made to continue to make LEZs work. As I said before, Glasgow have invested £500,000 of this revenue in tree planting and greening projects and a broader climate action.